Welcome back to our exploration of Egyptian architecture. This video is the second part of a multi-part series on Egyptian architecture. This documentary-style video gives a comprehensive overview of the architecture of the ancient Egypt, with the help of the book History of Architecture, The Comparative Method by Sir Banister Fletcher. Egyptian architecture is some of the most iconic in the world. In this video, we're going to be looking at the unique architectural character of Egyptian buildings. Here we're going to look at the use of column capitals, lintels, pilasters, and cornices in Egyptian architecture, as well as its distinctive features. We'll see how the Egyptians used different materials, techniques, and decorative elements to create a unique and instantly recognizable style. In the previous video, we explored some of the key factors that affected the Egyptian architecture. If you haven't watched it yet, there is a link below in the description. Without any further delay, let's get right into the video. A primitive building made of mud, puddled clay, and bundles of reeds evolved into a style of stone and granite in the valley of the Nile, the place that is the gift of a large river and the home of the oldest civilization. Reed bundles that had been linked together and positioned vertically in the ground at regular intervals made up the fundamental construction. The angled bundles were stronger. Other bundles were set up horizontally on top of these reeds to connect them, binding the uprights heads together. The pressure of the clay used to build the early roofs on the upright reeds that served as the framework for the walls is said to be the cause of the distinctive cornice. The rammed clay was kept in a projecting posture by the reeds, which also allowed the curve to be finished by a flat fillet that determined the terrace's level, forming the slightly protruding cornice. Beams were used for the door and window jambs and lintels in the more modest homes, while palm trunks were used in the more ostentatious ones. Therefore, this may be considered as a reasonable and probable precedent for the building of an Egyptian wall, whose shape is more appropriate for a construction made of rushes covered in mud or puddled clay than for one made of huge stones. A crucial feature, however, still stands: the batter or slope that the walls are always given. Viollet-le-Duc's beliefs on the genesis of this batter do not indicate the impact of material, and he claims that this characteristic was added later after being sanctioned by a royal order. He surmises that the practice originated from the pyramids, which were discovered to be unaffected by earthquakes, whereas straight-sided dwellings were upset because their walls were more easily overturned. However, it appears more logical to credit it to mud since, in order to reinforce such constructions, nothing would be more natural than to gently slant the bundles of reed towards the interior, making an almost arch. A treatment that in any other material seems improbable. Moving on to the interior architectural details of the style, the later granite column and capital have a very clear resemblance to the prehistoric reeds strung together at regular intervals and topped with the lotus bud. Examples of capitals and columns made of stone that were modeled by originals made of wood and reed are common, notably during the Theban monarchy, BC 3000 to BC 2100. Some of the pillars at Beni Hassan depict a bundle of 4 lotus stalks or reeds that are tied together towards the top and bulge over the ligature to form a capital that resembles a lotus bud. In later Egyptian history, this style of column was mostly utilized in a more substantial lithic form and in connection with the bell-shaped hollow capital, of which the earliest specimen dates to the 17th dynasty. The early reed and clay construction forms were really maintained throughout, despite the use of different building materials. The conservative Egyptians attempted to replicate this look using layers of stone and granite. The sgraffito, incised plaster, work on the older mud walls is said to be the source of the surface ornamentation used on the later granite structures. Such walls were incapable of having their surfaces molded or carved with high-relief projections, but when plastered, their flat surfaces offered an excellent canvas for decoration and teaching using hieroglyphics. Instead of deviating from the chosen design, the Egyptian method of ornamentation consisted of covering it with a more or less lavish type of drapery that never displayed a projecting outline and contented itself with encasing the geometric form like an embroidered fabric or a diapered covering. Egyptian art was remarkable at the time, but it is obvious that the spirit of criticism and logical method were lacking. Traditional forms, revered by long use, were retained and revived even after the building methods that had suggested them had been replaced by other systems. Egyptian art continued along an uninterrupted line of tradition, and when necessity required a change in the materials or the methods of construction, the immutable form was not altered. The pyramids, or royal tombs of the kings, and the temples are the major examples of ancient Egyptian architecture, in contrast to Assyria, where the king's palaces are the prominent examples. Egyptian wall murals, sculptures, jewelry, bronze tools and utensils, which have been discovered in their temples or tombs, demonstrate the high level of art to which the people have progressed. When it comes to the architecture, these structures give the observer the idea that they have been standing for all time because all of the remnants have a massive solidity and, most of the time, a majestic homogeneity. In many ways, the pyramids are the most spectacular structures from antiquity. When weighed against the labor, money, and materials required for their construction, the proportionate return in impressiveness and the greater beauties of the art are negligible. It is amazing how these massive granite slabs were finished and fitted because several of the precisely squared, polished, and fitted pieces are at least 20 feet long and 6 feet broad. Although M. Schwazi has provided several plausible suggestions in his most recent work, it is still unclear how these stone blocks are raised into place and how great distances by land and sea are covered in the quarrying and transporting processes. The temple's architectural style is remarkable and distinctive.